me go ahead and welcome Marin Conservation League President Bob Miller to officially welcome you to this evening's meeting.
Folks, welcome to MCL's annual meeting for 2021. We've missed being with you this year, although we've seen many of you in our virtual committee meetings. We're looking forward to gathering again in person, but we're not quite there yet. So how has this past year been? The bad news is that it's been a year full of crises, as we all know. COVID-19, economic adversity, the impact of climate change on catastrophic wildfires and disastrous heat storms, racial injustice, and more. The good news is that we adjusted really fast with new practices. So the epidemic had only a small impact on MCL's work. We continued advocating for Marin's environment on behalf of, and thanks to you, our members. So we also planned for Marin's and Marin Conservation League's future and began our response to calls for justice and equity. Now we're guided by MCL's mission and objectives, and I want to go through some highlights of our recent work by objective. Since our founding, we've had the objective to preserve natural resources through stewarding public lands. MCL's committees have worked with public land managers on various projects and actions, and here are two examples from the Parks and Open Space Committee. The committee carefully evaluated the county's proposed road and trail improvement projects and advocated for changes to protect sensitive resources. The committee also continued to resist approving electric bikes on unpaved roads in public lands without sufficient understanding of their impacts on the environment and without sufficient monitoring of their use. For our objective to reduce wildfire risk while protecting native habitats, the Fire and Environment Working Group, after successfully supporting Measure C, which created the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, then helped co-found and co-lead the Ecologically Sensitive Practices Collaborative, which has been developing best practices in vegetation management, working with a new authority, with Fire Safe Marin and others. And also got pro-environment language and principles inserted into Marin County's Community Wildfire Prevention Plan. That had to happen, and it did. In order to preserve ecological systems and watersheds across all lands and waters, the MCL Land Use, Transportation, and Water Committee advocated for many issues. Two examples: it actively opposed Measure D, preserving the San Geronimo Valley former golf course as both habitat and public resource, and it supported the Bay Conservation and Development Commission's plan to protect sensitive eelgrass and bayland habitats from the impacts of anchor outs in Richardson Bay. In order to rapidly reduce greenhouse gas emissions, sequester carbon, and adapt to climate change, the Climate Action Working Group continued to convene Marin's climate activists and advocate. Two examples: it defended MCE Clean Energy against attacks by PG&E and other investor-owned utilities, and it really encouraged MCE to invest its profits in innovation, in renewable energy and electrification technologies and programs, and in resiliency projects for underserved communities. Another objective is to manage the built environment so as to protect the environment and promote equity and quality of life. Again, the Land Use Committee was active on several fronts, including it actively helped to shape San Rafael's general plan and Novato's general plan, inserting a pro-environment perspective into each, and it opposed Novato's approval of Novato Costco's gas pumps. Then there's the objective to work across boundaries to connect natural and working landscapes. MCL's Agricultural Land Use Committee continued to foster relationships between the environmental and agricultural communities. It supported the Marin Carbon Project in sequestering carbon in rangeland soils, and it supported amending the Point Reyes National Seashore General Management Plan to maintain agriculture as a cultural and natural resource while promoting environmental best practices. And cutting across all that we do is our last objective, which is to preserve and enhance biodiversity of native species and habitats. That objective is there in all that we do. We also invested in the future of Marin Conservation League to continue its successful 88-year history. We finished and began to implement our new strategic plan. Among some exciting changes, we acknowledged the rapidly changing environment in our mission statement. We adopted a new vision statement, one of a biodiverse, resilient, and equitable Marin. And we added 2 guiding principles: to integrate climate change understanding into all of our work, which already is happening, and to integrate environmental justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion understanding into all of our work. We started in-depth workshops to deepen our understanding of the challenges and what we can do about those challenges. So that's an ultra brief summary of highlights. And folks, we have another objective. We want this institution to be effective for a lot more years, and we have a good shot of doing that. So I want to thank you, our members. You make Marin Conservation League's work possible. Thank you. David?
David, you're muted.
Bob, on behalf of MCL's membership, let me thank you for your leadership. We are now moving to the environmental awards part of tonight's program. A moment each year when MCL recognizes Marin's leaders in conservation for their contributions and commitment. For your reference, you can look up the MCL March-April newsletter for additional information about tonight's awardee winners. Similarly, you can visit the award page of our website to learn more about each award and view listings of previous award recipients. And we'll put those links in the chat shortly. And I do want to remind you that you've got the program that came with the email tonight. So you can also see that for reference. And I also want to say that with tonight's virtual event, please know that the awardees will be receiving their actual awards in hand in the coming weeks. So just know that we are taking care of the virtual and the real at the same time. So with that, let me start and say that MCL, I'm going to start with the Youth Award for Environmental Excellence and Leadership. MCL awards its Youth Award to Marin High School or college students who have made significant contributions to the community by seeking innovative solutions to the environmental problems and issues. We are pleased tonight to name Jeremy Lewis, a student of the College of Marin, as this year's recipient. Jeremy is currently working towards his bachelor's degree in environmental policy with a focus on climate change. He plans to attend law school and obtain a master's degree in law with the objective to write policies that govern corporations' environmental impact on the planet. His goal is to create and develop policies that mitigate the effects of climate change through regulating industry and transitioning to clean energy. Jeremy is the vice president of the College of Marin's Environmental Action Club, the president of the Alpha Gamma Sigma Honor Society, and a tutor for environmental science. He transitioned the Environmental Action Club to an online atmosphere when the pandemic struck. Jeremy Lewis has also helped to pass a fossil fuel divestment campaign at the College of Marin and has volunteered with the Indian Valley Organic Farm, Sausalito Beautiful, and Marin County Parks. Jeremy, it's our privilege and congratulations to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much to everyone at the Marin Conservation League that make this possible. Also an honorable mention to Joe Mueller that nominated me for this. When he asked me for the nomination, I was a little starstruck. You know, you don't really realize all the little things you do until someone acknowledges those. So I'm really, really grateful for the Marin County, the Marin Conservation League, and Joe Mueller as well. Thank you.
Jeremy, definitely very deserved. We know you'll make a difference with everything you touch. Know that MCL looks forward to you being a member when you can fit it in with all the rest that you're doing. With that, then let me move to the Marin Green Award for Environmental Leadership that MCL gives for outstanding contributions towards preserving and protecting the natural assets of Marin County. This year, it goes to Terry Green, the co-director of Shore Up Marin and Shore Up Marin City. Terry has vast experience in community development leadership, including her role in serving on a number of community boards as president and vice chair, and also co-founding Marin City Charter School. For example, I first met Terry as a member of the Marin Food Policy Council, where she is still a wonderful advocate and partner to increase access to local healthy food. Shore Up Marin is a multiracial environmental coalition that advocates for the equitable inclusion of low-income communities in areas of planning and community preparedness for environmental disasters. Their main focus is on emergency preparedness, flooding and hazard mitigation, sea level rise and climate adaptation, social equity, and quality of natural resources such as air, soil, and water. Early in 2019, Shore Up Marin initiated the transition into Shore Up San Rafael and Shore Up Marin City, reaching residents by going door to door with culturally relevant information to include them in disaster preparedness and other environmental issues. Terry Green is the lead person for Shore Up Marin City and will continue working with Marin City residents and allies to protect Marin City from flooding and sea level rise, climate change adaptation and mitigation, and promoting equitable community process in Marin City. Terry, it is indeed my pleasure to congratulate you for this award. You're still muted, Terry. We'll have you unmute. We don't want to miss one word, so go ahead and unmute.
You're right. Thank you. I would like to thank the Marin Conservation League for this special honor. I would like to thank Bob Miller and Pamela Reeves for your nomination, and Vicki Nichols and Kirsten Nolan for all of your support. Shore Up Marin City and Audubon are working together right now to restore the historic wetland in Marin City. We are calling this the Marin City Habitat for Life. Now, if you would like to be a part of this life-changing effort, I place my information in the chat, and please feel free to join us in this most needed restoration effort. Again, thank you, Marin Conservation League, for your special honor that you're given to me on this evening. Thank you.
No, Terry, we thank you. Just can't say enough about your amazing and continued leadership to make all of Marin healthy and safe. The John M. Macphail Jr. Green Business Award exemplifies environmental sensitivity in business. It also recognizes business leaders that have supported and improved communication between the business and environmental communities. Tonight, MCL recognizes Cyan Dandridge, founder and executive director for the Strategic Energy Innovations and the School of Environmental Leadership. SEI is an environmental nonprofit that builds leaders to drive sustainable solutions. Its initiatives include career development for emerging climate professionals, creating and supporting campuses as living labs, and a diverse curriculum library on environmental sustainability and valuable career skills. SEI is a project-based, environmentally focused program that emphasizes development and leadership and 21st century skills. For over 20 years, SEI has partnered with schools, communities, and businesses to develop a sustainability leadership pathway from elementary school to early career. By connecting students, residents, government officials, and the workforce in the design process of sustainability programs, Cyan Dandridge leads talented teams to identify and implement opportunities for varied communities to reach their goals. As a pioneer in the environmental sustainability field, Cyan continues to be excited about the potential for our communities and youth to create an environmentally responsible world. Cyan, congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so appreciative of everything that Marin Conservation League does, and I am so incredibly honored to be accepting this award tonight. And I especially want to recognize we have thousands of parents and students and community partners that work with our Marin School of Environmental Leadership. We have thousands of partners with our Climate Corps program and our Climate Corps fellows. And the work that I'm being recognized for today really should be distributed among all of those really, truly amazing individuals and people. And so I want to thank all of them and also thank all of you. I mean, I'm looking around at these faces and the work that all of you do is just blows me away. So thank you for the award and thank you for all that you do.
No, so well deserved, Cyan. I'll just say the pipeline of talented, prepared environmental leaders that you provide gives us all hope for the future. MCL bestows the Ted Wellman Water Award to an awardee who maintains Ted Wellman's high standards for protecting and preserving the water resources in Marin and the state. MCL is proud to recognize Chris Chu as this year's awardee. Chris Chu is the principal watershed planner for the Marin County Department of Public Works. She supports Marin communities with sea level rise, flood protection, and watershed restoration. She was involved in launching both marinwatersheds.org and marinslr.org websites, identifying project and funding options to reduce flooding and increase habitat, and supports regional planning for water resources through the North Bay Watershed Association and the Bay Area Integrated Water Management Planning Process. Most recently, Chris has led and managed Bay Wave, the sea level rise planning and adaptation program for the Bay shoreline in Marin. In this role, she is helping Marin move towards, Chris Chu is helping Marin move towards resilience through partnerships, education, and projects addressing the many adaptation needs. Chris, it's just such a pleasure to see you and recognize you with this award tonight.
Thank you so much, David. And thank you to MCL for this honor. It really is amazing to be recognized by so many great folks in this group tonight. It's definitely made a huge difference in the work that we've been able to do through Bay Wave. And so I really appreciate the honor and just thank you all. And I especially want to mention two people that are on this meeting with me right now, which both my current boss, Liz Lewis, and also my first boss, Laurette Rogers, who really did shape not only my viewpoints, but also really, help me grow and learn to do so much of this work. So thank you to both of them as well.
Chris, really the honor is Marin Conservation League's to add you to the list of previous awardees. So again, congratulations. The Marin Conservation League Volunteer of the Year Award recognizes one of our own members whose time and talent made it possible to realize MCL's mission. This year, the award goes to Director Jeff Stump. Jeff has initiated and led MCL's Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Ad Hoc Committee. This included I think just about all the board, I'll say. I mean, that'll put some people's feet to the fire, but this included the board completing the Diversity and Resilience Institute of El Paso's anti-racism training. This has also led to inclusion of equity goals in the recently updated Marin Conservation League strategic plan. Jeff was also a core member of the team that led that strategic plan update. He also is the co-author of co-chair of the Agricultural Land Use Committee, and this year chaired the nominating committee. Jeff Stump, MCL has benefited significantly from your efforts this year, and your leadership in the strategic plan and justice, equity, diversion, and inclusion has set a sound path for achieving MCL's mission going forward. It's definitely an honor on my part to recognize you with this award.
Well, thank you, David. And it's really great to be with you all here tonight. I'm sorry we can't be in person, but this, I think, works really well. And I want to congratulate all the winners of our environmental awards. look up to many of you folks. So I want to pass on my thanks to the event committee and the board for this honor. And as I reflect on this difficult but really rewarding year, I'm filled with gratitude for the Marine Conservation League, to our board, our staff, officers, issue committee leaders, and our members. I'm really proud of how quickly we adapted to the challenges presented by the pandemic, adopting the Zoom platform that's really allowed us to increase our engagement with our members and our partners, increase our engagement with our community, and keep moving forward with our important work. MCL is an all-volunteer working board. A lot of folks put a lot of time into our work, and it's really a pleasure to work with all of you. So thank you very much.
Jeff, again, congratulations, well deserved. It is not every year that MCL bestows its special award for environmental achievement, an award MCL reserves for really the most significant impact and contributions to conservation. This year, however, MCL wishes to recognize a very deserving individual, Burr Henneman. Speaking about his time in the 1970s, when he was on the Marin Conservation League board, Burr shares, I had as examples gods like Peter Bear, Grace and Ted Wellman, and youngsters such as Nona Dennis, Susan Stomp, Phyllis Faber, and others. It is safe to say Burr has become one of those examples through his volunteer and professional career. He served as the executive director of Point Reyes Bird Observatory, now Point Blue, in the 1980s. He co-founded Commonweal and directed their ocean program. His role in new ideas and ventures has led to foundational concepts and policies for coastal and ocean conservation. He contributed to the dawning of marine debris as an umbrella issue and area of conservation. He had a direct hand in the passing and implementation of the Marine Life Management Act, and as a result was honored in 1999 as a Pew Fellow in Marine Conservation. He was a founding board member of Island Conservation. As a Commonweal colleague shared about Burr, over the past 40 years, Burr's focus remains on select opportunities at the intersection of science, policy, and natural resources at the regional, state, and national levels, even the international levels. His focus has shifted over time from fisheries management reform to oil spill prevention and response to marine debris policy and to global seabird conservation. In a side trip into physical oceanography in the early 2000s, he helped California design and organize a coast-wide network of stations to monitor ocean currents. This work has taken Burr from Iraq to the Galapagos and back to Marin. Burr Henneman, Marin Conservation League is glad that you call Marin home, and grateful to you for all you have done to make it and the world better. Congratulations.
Thank you, David. That's a really kind introduction. Thank you very much. Everybody's been so good about time on this. I'm going to go just a little longer than other people have, but I'm going to use that time and also to toss a virtual bouquet back to MCL. This award is especially meaningful to me because MCL has such a strong tradition as an organization of volunteers, as Jeff highlighted. And volunteering has always been an important part of my environmental career. I moved to Marin 50 years ago. I was working in television news at the time, and I was ready for a change. I was able to volunteer a lot in those days for MCL, for PRBO, the Native Plant Society, and others. Those years were like a very practical graduate school program for me. Two quick examples of where that led. A little bit oversimplified, but to the point. My first oil spill was 50 years ago, volunteering to clean seabirds. Years later, I was deeply involved with the Exxon Valdez oil spill and oil spill policy with the Ocean Conservancy. And then the Persian Gulf War oil spills and fires, consulting for the Saudi Wildlife Agency. Also 50 years ago, my first volunteer seabird research was on the Farallones for PRBO. A few years later, I became PRBO's CEO. And just a few years ago, the Packard Foundation invited me to design and launch their global seabird conservation program. I'd like to think there's still a pathway from volunteer to professional career or career change, and that there might be some in the MCL family on that path. I'd love to encourage them, as I was by MCL and others. Thank you again.
Burr, again, thank you for being an example for all of us to learn from. The Peter Bear Lifetime Achievement Award is presented to a person whose lifetime achievements reflect exemplary standards for preservation and protection of Marin's natural assets. The award is named for Peter Bear, city councilman, county supervisor, and state senator in honor of his legacy of service. What a privilege it is to recognize Susan Stomp as the 2021 recipient. Her life's work matches perfectly what this award represents. As one of her supporters explains, she is a fervent believer in giving back to her community. Other people often credit her with being their inspiration to become involved in their communities. Susan Stomp, a retired businesswoman, has been active in conservation and civic affairs for many years. In addition to serving a 2-year term as MCL's president from 2011 to 2013, she continues to chair both the North Marin Unit and the Land Use, Transportation, and Water Committees, and coordinates MCL's coastal cleanup efforts. Susan has served Novato as mayor, council member, planning commissioner, and co-chair of Novato Clean and Green Day. She has also served on numerous boards, including the Olampali People, Marin Baylands Advocates, League of Women Voters, Environmental Forum of Marin, Novato Human Needs Center, and the Sierra Club San Francisco Bay Chapter. For 43 years, Susan Stomp has poured her soul into Novato and Marin, driven by her hearty Midwest work ethic to make this a better place to live. Her list of public service is dizzying. She has worked to preserve both homegrown democracy and Novato and Marin's gorgeous environment. Susan, we all applaud you.
Thank you, David, and thank you to the MCL board and those of you that put me on this list of absolutely exemplary people who have been awarded this award before. It was set up back in the 90s when we were looking for an appropriate award for Peter Bear. He had done so much for the county and the state and our rivers. And he was the MCL president when I was on the board in the 80s. And he was such an inspiration. And we didn't have an award that would adequately express our appreciation. And the people who have received it since Peter got the first award I'm just so honored to be on that list now with the people who've received it previously. So thank you ever so much. This really means a lot to me. Thank you.
Susan, you're very welcome. I'll just say it this way. Thank you for being the shoulders we all stand on.
Thank you.
This concludes the awards part of our program. I'll ask you all, if you're able, use your reaction button, give a hearty round of applause, reach out in the chat to any one of our award recipients or all of them and just congratulate them. I have to tell you, as we've been preparing for this, all of us have been so impressed with this slate of awardees for the 2021 Marine Conservation Environmental Awards. So please do congratulate them and know that we're so grateful to have such wonderful leaders leading us and contributing to Marin's environment and well-being. At this time, allow me to call back up our Marine Conservation League Board President, Bob Miller, as we begin to work through comments and introductions of the Board of Directors.
So thank you, Thank you, David. I want to thank the Marin Conservation League directors, including officers, for their work. It's a terrific group of environmental advocates from all parts of the county. You know, having done in-depth policy-related research for a living, I deeply respect the work that goes into getting MCL environmental advocacy positions right. I admire the depth of expertise and amount of effort that goes into the thoroughly vetted and thoughtful advocacy letters and positions that MCL produces on many issues, including ones that I mentioned earlier. Thank you, fellow board members, for all that you do. Very special thanks goes to Vicki Nichols, who is stepping down from the board after 12 years of service. Vicki has served as an officer, executive committee member, and chair of the Organizational Development Committee. If you've attended and enjoyed an MCL business breakfast, annual dinner, or walk into history, please know that Vicki Nichols played a big role in it. Vicki has also been active in many other areas. We will miss Vicki on our board. We definitely want her to remain active in our events and other MCL activities. Thank you, Vicki, for your service to the board for so many years. Ken Drexler stepped down as treasurer after skillfully guiding the organization's finances for more than 20 years. He'll remain on the board. Ken has contributed a lot in multiple ways to help the organization succeed. He was MCL Volunteer of the Year Award a record 4 times. Ken will continue to help the organization in numerous ways, including editing, membership work, advice on finances, and by continuing to provide his sage counsel. We thank both Vicki and Ken for their years of contributions to MCL and very much look forward to working with both of them going forward. So the next part of the meeting will be led by Jeff Stump, the chair of the nominating committee. Marin Conservation League takes seriously the selection process for board members, including officers. A lot of work, many discussions go into the process each year. As part of MCL's secret sauce for success, it served and is serving the organization well. This year, I want to thank Jeff and the rest of the nominating committee for the especially outstanding job that they've done. So here's Jeff.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Nice to be back in front of you all. I also want to join Bob in thanking the members of our nominating committee. We did a lot of hard work this year. We met weekly for months via Zoom, fortunately, to understand the needs of the organization. We got to meet with our leadership, with issue committees, with administrative committees to understand, what MCL needed in a class of new directors. And I think we did a really good job of recruiting this year, and I'm going to introduce new folks in a moment, but please join me in the chat in thanking Larry Kennings, Linda Novi, Doug Wilson, and Rick Freitas for their service this past year. Couldn't have done it without all of you folks. I also want to thank board members for passing along suggestions. We had quite a great list of potential candidates, and it was a really great year. Secondly, I want to thank all of the MCL members who took time to participate in our election process. Normally we gather together and by voice vote, we first nominate and then approve a slate of officers and new directors. But for the second year, we did the vote by mail, and it's a very important part of our process. So thank you to Ken and staff for getting that election out, and thank you to all the members for returning your ballots. We're grateful to each of you. So without further ado, I'm pleased to announce the results of our 2021 election. Okay, so starting with president, we elected Bob Miller again. First vice president will be Mike Swayze. Second vice president is Terry Thomas. Secretary is Susan Stomp. And treasurer is Richard Jensen. So re-elected as MCL directors are Ken Drexler of Fairfax, Greg Zitney of Novato, Roger Harris of Corte Madera, Larry Kennings of Mill Valley, and Kate Powers of San Rafael. And finally, I'm very excited to announce the election of 3 new directors to the MCL board. Richard Jensen of Corte Madera, Madeline Kellner of Novato, and Paul Jensen of San Rafael. I have to go back in the record books and take a look, but I think this is the first time we've elected siblings to the board of directors at the same time, at least. So congratulations, folks. And of course, I want to acknowledge the other 10 board members who continue to serve their existing terms. And you see a nice slide of those folks. So next, before I send you back to David, I'm going to briefly introduce our new directors. In the chat, I think Kirsten's going to drop in a link to the MCL website where you can get more information of all the existing directors, our leaders, and especially the new directors. So first off is Richard Jensen. Rich joined MCL as a director and as treasurer in February of this year. He retired after working in the financial services industry for more than 40 years, working for firms like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and American Express. He is now a business management consultant to nonprofits in Marin County, providing strategic and marketing planning advice with a focus on goal formation, fundraising, board governance, and financial control. Rich received his Bachelor of Arts in Economics and an MBA in General Management from Golden Gate University in San Francisco and serves on a variety of nonprofit boards. This last year, Rich worked closely with Ken Drexler and Martha Richter Smith on the staff to get up to speed on MCL's finances, and we are grateful to him for stepping into such an important role for the organization. So thank you, Rich. Our second new director is Madeline Kellner. There she is. Madeline grew up in Berkeley and spent her early years enjoying nature in Inverness. In 1993, she and her family moved to Novato so she could take an administrator position with Kaiser and Santa Rosa. Madeline has served as Marin County Health Services Director and is Executive Director of the In-Home Support Services Public Authority of Marin. Madeline was elected to the Novato City Council from 2007 through 2015 and served as mayor in 2011. She served on the Marin Transportation Authority of Marin and SMART boards, and on the board of the League of California Cities. You can probably tell that she maintains a keen interest in equitable housing and transportation solutions. Most recently, Madeline and husband Clint served as Peace Corps volunteers in Guatemala in 2016 through 2018, and in the Amazon of Peru in 2020. Even though they were called home in that year because of COVID, I know that Madeline continues to work with her sponsors via Zoom, so it's a really great platform. So welcome to the team, Madeline. It's great to have you. And finally, our third new director is Paul Jensen. Hey, Paul. So after 40 plus years as a city planner, Paul is finally retiring this year and sometime in 2021. His interest in city planning was influenced by the 1973 Marin Countywide Plan, which balanced the protection of open space and agricultural land by concentrating growth along the urban corridor. His career in city planning started with the city of San Rafael in 1980. He's owned his own consulting firm, and most recently, served as the City of Santa Fe Community Development Director. Paul believes that balancing environmental protection with community needs, such as housing and commerce, is necessary for a healthy future. He also sees that the lens of climate change needs to be considered in our action, as Marin County is vulnerable to increased fire hazard and flooding, as well as sea level rise. So I think Paul's going to be joining us after he wraps up his work at the city, which is in process. So folks, please join me in thanking our officers and directors for their service to the Marin Conservation League. And again, you can find more information about the MCL board members on the website that staff has linked in chat. So that concludes the business side of the election, and I'm going to send it back to you, David.
Great, Jeff. Really, to the nominating committee, phenomenal work. And I know the entire Marin Conservation League membership thanks these new directors and all of the directors for stepping into these roles and levels of commitment. Well, at this point, I want to just say, do you remember I said there would be a door prize? Well, it is time to give that prize away. And our incredible behind the scenes meeting production team is operating the virtual random name selector as we speak. The prize, by the way, is a great collection of Point Reyes Farmstead cheeses and Bonnie Bee honey products. And we've got a nice representation of that up for you here. So the lucky winner will go home with this collection. We'll make arrangements with that winner to make sure that we get it to them safely and ready for them to enjoy. And as that random name selector rattles through, we'll come to the winner here shortly. I'm waiting for it to be announced in the chat as you are. I'm on pins and needles here. And there we go. Delene Kais, I believe, if I'm pronouncing that right. Delene, are you with us? You have to be eligible. Maybe you could raise your hand, use the raised hand feature in the reactions button. Oh, Dellen. Okay, I apologize if we're not pronouncing your name right, but congratulations. We will make arrangements for you. You'll get to enjoy this. I think there's plenty there to have a nice gathering with some friends, of course, vaccinated, right? But definitely. Okay, very good, very good. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for staying with us and being the door prize winner. Okay. So at this point, we're really honored, and we're going to move into hosting our guest speaker, Congressman Jared Huffman. We understand that he's actually back with us here in Marin County after probably a very long week and couple weeks in DC. We have asked him to provide some high points of current activities and initiatives for the environment and the 2nd Congressional District, and I think he's ready to give us some in-depth ideas of his environmental agenda going forward. Jared Huffman represents California's 2nd Congressional District, which spans the north coast of the state from the Golden Gate to the Oregon border. And I think most of you know that includes Marin and Sonoma, Mendocino, Humboldt, Trinity, and Del Norte counties. He was first elected to the Congress in November 2012 and currently serves on the Committee on Natural Resources, the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, and the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis. In the 117th Congress, he chairs the Natural Resources Subcommittee on Water, Oceans, and Wildlife, with jurisdiction over federal water projects, fisheries management, coastal zone and oceans policy, and wildlife and endangered species. In addition to his 4 terms in the U.S. Congress, MCL and Congressman Huffman have a longer relationship that include his 6 years in the California Assembly and 12 years as director of the Marin Municipal Water District. Congressman Jared Huffman, thank you for your decades-long commitment from the very local to the national level, and thank you for joining us tonight.
And there is the cue to unmute. So excellent David, it's great to be with you, and it is always an honor to speak to the venerable, old but still viable and vibrant Marin Conservation League, 85 years strong. When I think about how long MCL has been working to protect our environment, I feel like a total newcomer, let me tell you, because I didn't start into these issues until I ran for the water board in 1994, which of course was just the other day. And as I remember back, you referenced our long working relationship. I remember back when I started into that campaign and I needed to study issues and meet with experts and get ready for that. MCL was just at the heart of it, of the most complex issues about water policy, not just taking positions and writing letters like environmental groups do, but just doing exhaustive research and knowing the technical details. Your all volunteer powerhouse team there would just sit thanklessly through hours and hours of public meetings and pour through engineering reports and just became the go-to resource on the tough issues surrounding water supply planning in Marin County. So I came to have just an enormous respect for MCL back then. And really over the years, I've just come to associate that kind of intelligent, substantive engagement with MCL, as well as your critical role as a convener, I think, of the broader environmental community, bringing folks together in so many important ways. So thank you for all of it. And I'm so glad that I got to listen in to your awards presentation. That was exciting, maybe the highlight of my day, but you have chosen to honor a fantastic multi-generational group of environmental heroes, including some of my longtime dear friends and allies. So to Burr and Susan and Terry and Chris, Cyan, Jeff, and Jeremy, congratulations on your well-earned recognition tonight. So as you mentioned, David, we're going to get right into more of a dialogue. I know with an audience like MCL, I wouldn't want to insult you just by delivering a speech or trying to entertain you. Although when your spare room becomes your office during a pandemic, a guitar is always, just a few feet away. But I won't put you through that. I will instead tell you a little bit about some of the highlights of the environmental work I've been doing in Congress. And then I'm really looking forward to the questions and answer and the two-way dialogue. So let me tell you about one of my big priorities, really the last two Congresses, and it involves our public lands. I've got a bill that is a huge part of what has become one of the bigger public lands packages moving through Congress in a long, long time. The package as a whole is called the Protecting America's Wilderness Act, or the PAW Act, and it would preserve over 1 million acres of land in 3 different states. But for the California piece of that, my bill that I've been working on since I came to Congress is really the big piece of it. It is the Northwest California Wilderness, Recreation, and Working Forest Act. I'm going to brag about it a little bit because it's unusual for a wilderness or a public lands bill. It does the things we tend to associate with those types of bills. It designates a lot of additional wilderness land. 10 existing wilderness areas are expanded and 8 new ones are established. And it's a total of 257,000 new acres of wilderness protection. So that's important. But we chose those areas really carefully for their unique habitats and biodiversity. And also, we know that there's a political balance with designating wilderness. So we made sure to pick areas that would be broadly supportable. We're not retiring any roads or causing any trail closures or lack of access. There's no new federal land coming in. This is all land that's already managed by the federal government. And we're not taking away areas that would be potentially of commercial value to the timber industry. These are places that are highly unlikely to ever get logged. So I think that's why we've had pretty broad support. We would protect 379 miles of new wild and scenic rivers in this bill. And then we've got a working forest aspect to it as well, a 730,000 acre special restoration area in the South Fork Trinity and Mad River and North Fork Eel watersheds. And what this does is it takes areas of forest that are not in good health right now. They were cut over at some point in the past and typically replanted in this even age plantation manner. So you've got a very dense forest without a lot of diversity to it. It's really vulnerable to fire. It's not healthy, not providing habitat values. And by going in and actually doing some thinning and clearing, especially roadside shaded fuel breaks, we can improve the health of the forest, certainly much improve resiliency in terms of catastrophic fire. And we'll take the revenues from those projects and put it back into coho salmon restoration projects in this same watershed area. So it's a really nice model, and it makes this a really unusual bill in that package of sort of standard wilderness bills. And then we've got a lot of great stuff for recreation. We've got new visitor centers and trail designations, and even a study of some new lodging at Redwood National Park. So we're super proud of this bill. It's a big, big deal. And it has passed out of the House 3 times now. Twice last year with bipartisan support, and then we got it out early this year because we know getting anything good out of the Senate is a tough thing. So we wanted to get it out early. That gives us the better part of 2 full years to work on finding some moving target in the Senate to attach it to. And I know that if we get it to Joe Biden's desk, he'll sign it. He's already made that clear. So I'm excited about that, a really big public lands bill. I'll mention also my work on climate. One part of my work on climate as involves drilling. So I've been leading the fight pretty much since I got to Congress on permanent protection against new offshore drilling in the Pacific coast. And we had a little bit of a watershed accomplishment in the last Congress. My bill that would protect the Pacific coast got merged with a bill to protect the Atlantic coast and another bill of mine to protect the Arctic from any new offshore drilling, and it passed out of the House of Representatives with bipartisan support. It's sort of now the high water mark for what we've been able to do in Congress to prevent new offshore drilling. So now we're in a new Congress, and what's great about that is we've got a president who on day 1 took executive action to essentially freeze new offshore drilling. And what we need to do now is keep passing these bills so that we codify those protections and that freeze becomes permanent. So I haven't reintroduced my bill. Senator Feinstein is carrying it in the Senate. And I've also done an even more ambitious bill on this subject called the Keep It in the Ground Act. I'm the House sponsor of this. Senator Jeff Merkley is the other part of our team over in the Senate. And this would not only stop any new offshore drilling anywhere in the Outer Continental Shelf, but it would shut down any new oil and gas development in all of our public lands. It wouldn't end existing leases, but it would phase out ones that aren't being used. And there's a lot of zombie leases out there. If we don't do these things to start locking up fossil fuel reserves, prevent them from being extracted, we can't meet our climate goals. So I think this is a super important policy to keep pursuing. If you care about oceans and fisheries, you mentioned my committee jurisdiction. I'm also going to be the lead author on a bill to reauthorize the Magnuson-Stevens Act. And this is our most important federal marine fisheries management bill. It's also really an important ocean protection bill. And we've done a national listening tour. I did that over the course of the last year. It got interrupted by the pandemic, but we continued it virtually. All kinds of stakeholder input, and we're going to be introducing that bill in the weeks ahead. But it will, some of the features will include climate-ready fisheries, modernizing data collection and improving science for how we manage our fisheries, and then a big focus on ecosystem-based management in our fisheries, including forage fish, which don't get the attention they need. We don't often even manage forage fisheries, but they play such a vital role in terms of sustaining other fisheries and, of course, the entire ocean ecosystem. And then strengthening a little provision in Magnuson called essential fish habitat, which sounds like it would be protected, right? If something's declared as essential fish habitat. Unfortunately, there was never any teeth in that part of the law. So we're going to try to add those teeth, because when you get a place like Bristol Bay in Alaska, which is the most prolific salmon fishery in the world, and someone proposes a terrible idea like the Pebble Mine, which would potentially wreck it, that mechanism of essential fish habitat should be a critical way to stop a bad project from wrecking a fishery. And so stay tuned if you care about these issues. That bill is going to be really, really important. I'll just mention two more localized issues that are near and dear to me. We were at risk last year of losing a really historic opportunity to take out 4 obsolete hydro dams on the Klamath River. There had been an agreement. It kind of faltered, and FERC issued a decision that allowed Pacific Corp to kind of backpedal. That's the owner of the dam. It's actually owned by Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett. But it looked last year like Pacific Corp was going to pull out and not go forward with the dam removal agreement. We held hearings. I passed a bill out of the House. We kind of took part with our tribal and environmental allies in a maximum pressure campaign to try to elevate this all the way to Warren Buffett. And I'm happy to say the message got through, and Pacific Corp did an about face. An agreement has been reached, and 2 years from now, we're going to start taking out those dams. It'll be the largest dam removal project in American history, and it comes none too soon for the downstream tribes and others who, for whom that fishery is a lifeline. We've got a similar opportunity on the Eel River, and I'll just close with that. Those of us in Marin County are connected to the Potter Valley Project, whether you know it or not. For the last 100 years, a PG&E hydro project has been diverting water from the Eel into the Russian River, and that project was up for relicensing. PG&E decided that it didn't make any economic sense, and they abandoned the project. So that creates an opportunity. We know that the entire Russian River basin, including Marin County, which gets a fair amount of its water from the Russian River, can't afford for that water supply diversion to be totally cut off. But we've been able to show that you can maintain a diversion sufficient to meet water needs while removing the biggest dam in that project, Scott Dam, and opening up fish passage on the Eel River. Really a great thing for what should be a really strong fishery, but it needs help. So it's a 2-basin solution, I call it. I've convened dozens of stakeholders around this, and we now have a coalition moving forward to try to take over the license and do something, pretty big and historic while maintaining our water supply reliability. I'll just close there, David, and happy to dive into your questions.
Sure, and we, again, thank you for making the time to join us this evening. It really means a great deal to us, as it always does, to have time to discuss with you. For our participants, just so you know what we're doing, we are going to just share a few questions. We generated the list of questions from our board of directors, a way in which we could get to a lot of our issues committees and bring forward some things that they wanted to learn about. So those attending tonight's meeting, that's where our questions came from. And to my co-directors, please be kind. We may not get to every question since there are 18 or 20 of us on the board now. So just please forgive me if we choose not to, if I take editorial license and we don't get to all of your questions. So maybe for starters, and please, Jared, if I may, just give us a sense, we are learning what post-COVID is like. Mm-hmm. What are some things about the economy that are thriving as a result of COVID, are receiving or should receive political support to thrive? In other words, what have we learned, and what's that mean for the economy?
Well, I think that's probably a good way to try to look at this. There are silver linings, even in a really rotten experience. And for the issues we care about, I think you can include the outdoor economy in areas that have thrived and that are thriving and are maybe more valued and appreciated than ever. I know in my district, when I talk to folks that manage parks and open spaces and outdoor economy businesses, they have seen business go up. And you could sort of appreciate why. It's something people can safely do during a pandemic, but hopefully it grew the constituency for the protection and responsible use of these great outdoor places. So I would include that.
Yeah, no, good. Thank you. It just helps us to think about the transition, the next transition we're under. Mm-hmm. One of our board members wanted to have you comment on the actions that the previous administration took to weaken the Endangered Species Act by limiting the definition of critical habitat, weaken the Clean Water Act by redefining waters of the United States, weaken the environmental reviews of federal projects under NEPA, So what is the current status of reversing these actions under the Biden administration, and what new significant legislation may be in the works in Congress now with respect to these 3 acts? And I realize that's 3 questions in one, so please, you can take liberty.
We can try to unpack it. There's a lot there, but there's also just a lot of damage from 4 years of the Trump presidency that does have to be undone. And I think the short answer, David, is that each of these things may have a slightly different appropriate mechanism for undoing that. I want to undo all of it, of course, but not all of it will require an act of Congress. Some of it has already been done by executive order. And if you think of the things that Trump did, with one of his flashy, sign the paper and hold it up for the camera kind of moments in the White House, it's just as easy to undo a lot of that stuff. And thankfully, President Biden has been pretty busy on that front. Some of the other things you talked about, waters of the United States, and some of the rulemaking type things are a little more complicated. There is pending litigation in some cases that prevented those Trump rules from being finalized. That's good. We will be able to hopefully undo those rules. And the worst case scenario is when you got to start an entirely new rulemaking, and that can take 2 years or more. And some of it, unfortunately, will require some of that. But for example, the Trump administration in its final days was just rushing to try to do an Arctic lease sale in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. This is an area that I've been fighting to protect. I believe that the Biden administration can reject the leases that were awarded under that sale. It was a very flawed process, but they're doing it thoughtfully and carefully. And I think we're on the path to that happening, but it hasn't happened yet. If they're unable to do that, I'll need to try to find a way to legislate and prevent that from going forward.
Yeah, no, good. I appreciate that each one has its path. We talk a couple local issues, specifically with regard to Coastal Commission. One of them is that, you're probably aware that the Conservation League supports the plans by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to restore the South Farallon Islands by removing invasive non-native mice. Really, and I know you're in detail with that issue, but the question really is, would you be willing to write a letter to the Coastal Commission in support of the consistency determination for that plan?
I'm open to it, David. I understand the imperative to save our bird species on the Farallons. And you really don't have good choices when you get a situation like this, where an invasive species has overrun an island with all of these fragile rookeries. But I will look carefully into weighing in and support. I guess I get to be another highly popular person at a Coastal Commission hearing if I do that, but that's okay. The slings and arrows are part of the job. I wonder also, though, you may have said there've been some, I don't get all my information from Netflix, but I do see some interesting things on Netflix. And I saw a series recently on genetic modification and the CRISPR program, and how they are looking at some applications in an island environment where a modified gene, can't get out of control to do similar things. I believe it's in Massachusetts on Martha's Vineyard. And I don't know if anyone has looked at that on the Farallons. I hate the idea of just dousing the place with pesticides. Although I understand you may not have many other options, but I just think we got to look creatively, but we got to get rid of the mice.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. Similarly, and maybe not to look back at last week's Coastal Commission meeting, but if you want to debrief that a little, please, go ahead. But more looking forward, we are anticipating a record of decision from the Point Reyes National Seashore about their general management plan amendment. So from your perspective, what are the next steps? Will the Park Service be able to begin working on operating agreements with the ranchers? And do they have adequate resources from Congress to implement the plan?
Yeah, I think we're very close to finalizing the record of decision. And I think the Park Service intention is to move forward with these ranch specific agreements and permits, which are the way we hold our ranchers to these high standards that we expect of them. And it's also the way they can get the financing to make the investments, to make the improvements that will improve water quality and other things that we want to see. So this needs to happen. I want to thank MCL for the very thoughtful way you engaged. You do it on all the issues that you undertake. You don't start with a position and say, now how can I defend my position? You wade into the facts and you study them and you think about the responsible outcomes. And I think you did a great job in this case. So there will be litigation. I'm certain of that. If the Park Service did good NEPA work, and I have no way of knowing if that was the case, I think it'll probably be upheld and we will all move forward together. We'll keep working on trying to improve water quality and trying to improve biodiversity and trying to make these ranches and dairies a model of good, sustainable working landscapes. But we need the certainty of these permits and leases, and I think it is close at hand.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you. Kind of a broader global question, and just probably relates to your committee work on oceans. But we're aware of the plastic pollution worldwide. The U.S. used to ship recyclables to the third world countries for recycling. As the greatest consumers on Earth, the U.S. should be recycling on our own waste. Would you support legislation that would set up domestic factories to recycle, repurpose, and rid all plastics from our waste stream?
I'm certainly supportive of building that capacity here in our country. A lot of times we shipped a lot of stuff to China and congratulated ourselves for high levels of recycling. We're not really sure what happened with a lot of that stuff. And I think we've got to set a higher bar. But I would also say this, as important as it is to recycle, I think you referenced your question going upstream. We just have to start eliminating plastics from packaging and just the ubiquitous ways in which plastic is overused. And this is the next way that the fossil fuel industry is going to try to keep making money. So as we begin to decarbonize the electricity sector and the transportation sector, they're going to start pushing plastics like never before. And we just can't allow that to happen because we know what it's doing to our coastal ecosystems and to our oceans and other water resources. So yeah, we're going to work on all aspects of this. My colleague from Long Beach, Alan Lowenthal, is going to be leading one of the more bold federal anti-plastics bills we've ever seen. And I'll be a co-sponsor working with him on that.
Great, we'll be looking for that as well. And thank you for that tip, that to be heads up on that. Well, kind of getting back to some of your earlier tenure here in Marin County, and hypothetical, but because of the very real drought conditions, if you were on the Marin Municipal Water District Board today, while at the beginning of this extensive drought, what policies would you support to both conserve water for water supply and protect watershed resilience and ecosystem health?
Well, that's a fun question, and I don't want to step on my friends who are currently directors here, so I want to be responsible here in what I say. There's no easy answers, David. I mean, we're heading into a really severe drought. I get out to our watershed a lot. To just keep my sanity, I like to go fishing in Alpine Lake or Kent Lake. And just a couple of weeks ago, I've never seen this time of year our reservoirs as low as they are right now. It's troubling. And we know that the Marin Municipal gets 25% of its water from the Russian River, North Marin about 80%. Russian River water resources are terribly dry, frightfully dry. Warm Springs has never been this dry before at this date, and Lake Mendocino is already almost gone. So it's bad all around. And I guess the one thing I would say is I think I would not wait to call this emergency what it is. I think you've got to start conserving early. And I know that sometimes there can be backlash and that can be unpopular, but there's nothing more unpopular than running out of water as we move further into a drought. So I think we probably do need to ratchet up the level of lighting our collective hair on fire about this drought and about conservation. It's just got to start in a much more meaningful way right now. And the big concern, we can do the things we need to make it through this summer. My big concern is if it doesn't rain in the fall, because it is that consecutive year of terrible drought that we don't have an answer to. And that's despite really good conservation programs in Marin at both of our water districts. We've been making gradual progress, expanding recycling, but we could run out of water. And this is where none of our choices are great. I've always been a proponent of having at least the plan on the shelf, permitted, ready to go for an emergency desal plant. Nobody wants to have to build that. But as I look around at the options, at least having that plan in place might be a good idea.
Great. No, thank you for that. And you mentioned the next question kind of relates to some of the work you're doing up in some of the other watersheds, but and ties in with President Biden's infrastructure and jobs bill. So the question just reads, how might the National Infrastructure and Jobs Bill provide funds also for the multiple benefits of restoring adjacent watersheds and implementing green infrastructure strategies as a part of funded transportation maintenance and development projects? In other words, avoiding the impacts, but getting the infrastructure in place.
Yeah, so I think part of the answer to that is to make natural infrastructure a priority as we think about the infrastructure of this country. It's not going to be all highly engineered solutions to the different engineering or different infrastructure needs that we have. We know that with sea level rise, actually the natural solutions are far better, and they provide multiple benefits. So we're going to try to broaden the definition of infrastructure, try to include our natural infrastructure. I want to try to include the restoration economy, which is a big deal in my district. And then, I want to avoid the pitfall of thinking that we have to dramatically streamline environmental laws in order to have infrastructure. I think that's a false choice. I think the number of infrastructure projects that are actually halted by environmental litigation is minuscule when you actually look at the data, but it is continuously trotted out as a false choice by those who always want to go after NEPA and the Endangered Species Act. I'm going to try to make sure that there are no such trade-offs as we move this plan forward.
Great. No, that's very helpful. This is our last question for you, Congressman. And you hit upon this a couple examples in your opening comments. Your professional career began with gender and race discrimination case law. So we're interested, what are the current justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion priorities for the 2nd Congressional District, and what role can the Conservation League have in those priorities?
Well, thank you for that question. And I think we all need to be including equity as a consideration, a question, a priority in everything we do. I'm pleased to see us beginning to do that as a country and as a community. You're doing it tonight. You're recognizing Terry Green's great leadership in Marin City, and that's one of the areas that I would highlight. We've got a lot of communities like Marin City in my district that have borne the brunt of environmental injustice, maybe located near freeways or industrial facilities because it was easier to put them there. And they didn't get the protections that other more affluent communities would get from air quality and other impacts. It's time to change our priorities when it comes to things like that. I represent a lot of rural and tribal communities in my district too. I go all the way to the Oregon border, and I've just got some terrible poverty and social injustice. I brought up the Klamath River dam removal. That is a social justice issue in a big, big way. Those 4 dams on the Klamath River create some of the worst water quality, some of the highest concentration of some poisonous algae that's been measured anywhere in the planet. And that destroys water quality and kills fish downstream for the Karuk and the Yurok and the Hoopa Valley tribe that have subsistence fisheries. And in the case of the Yurok, a commercial fishery that is critical to their plans for economic development. So that was a big part of the case we made to Warren Buffett. You say that you care about equity and social justice and Black Lives Matter. Take a look at what your dams are doing to the historically disadvantaged communities I represent downstream. So I think all of us just need to continually try to be mindful about these things and try to reprioritize equity and environmental justice going forward. I'm pleased to see MCL doing its part.
Well, thank you for that, and please count on us to work with you going forward. That brings us to our close of our questions, and just again, thank you for joining on behalf of all our members and the participants tonight. Thank you for joining our annual meeting. Do you have any last thoughts or parting comments that you'd like to share?
I think we've covered a lot of great ground. It's just always a pleasure. And really, when I think about our wonderful environmental community in Marin County, I think a lot about MCL. I think you've just really set the standard for what a great local environmental organization ought to do and how they ought to do it. So thanks for your great work, and thanks for having me tonight. Congrats to the awardees, and thanks to the outgoing board members. Congrats to the incoming board members. I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you. Well, folks, yeah, please, would you please, you can use the reaction feature or just raise your hands, and really appreciate Congressman Huffman. Jared, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thanks, David.
We started this evening asking you for 3 words about issues that are important to you that MCL is working on. So here we want to share with you the results from that. This is a word cloud. It represents all the responses we got. And if you take a moment to read it and look at it, you're seeing a diversity of issues, a lot of different issues entered into the survey. You're seeing some words that are larger than others, and that represents issues that a number of people listed, and really highlights them as maybe higher priority. But it really points, what you can see here is that all of us have a diversity of things we're concerned about, and we share some priorities as well. And that's what MCL, we hope, is about, is covering the broad array of issues in conservation and environmental protection for Marin County, and when needed, focusing and dialing in on specific priorities. So please take a moment to thank yourselves for participating in that survey and giving us this feedback about what's important to you as we continue to do the work that Marin Conservation League does. With that, I want to pause for a minute. I want to thank our behind the scenes Zoom production team, not only for their efforts tonight, but as Marin Conservation League staff. We had special technical help from Beverly Avery tonight, who was our Zoom consultant extraordinaire. And of course, our longstanding staff helping us put on all kinds of issues committee work, the newsletter, keeping the website up to date, the e-blast, the e-news that you receive. That work comes from Martha Richter-Smith and Kirsten Nolan. So really, please, as members of Marin Conservation League, thank those 3 folks for all of their effort, both tonight and throughout this past year. We, as the board of directors, want to thank you for joining us. We do this work because of you, and as the president said early in his comments, Bob Miller, that we want to keep doing this work for a long time. So thank you for what you do and how you support Marin Conservation League. Please keep yourselves safe, you and your families. Be healthy. We look forward to seeing you soon at an upcoming Issues Committee meeting. And hopefully this time next year, we can host you for the MCL annual meeting in person. This concludes our program.